"Sweetheart, use Dad's card. He's got about $130,000 saved," my son said, as if I were not a man who worked for every dollar, but a malfunctioning ATM wearing a human costume. I stood there in the living room of Travis's overpriced rental townhouse, coffee mug halfway to my lips, watching my daughter-in-law's eyes light up like someone had just announced free designer handbags for life. This wasn't a question. This wasn't a request. This was Travis handing Vanessa my bank card like it was a grocery store coupon, like 40 years of my labor meant nothing more than his convenience. Vanessa snatched the card with perfectly manicured nails I'd probably paid for during some previous emergency, and headed for the door. Travis returned to his phone, scrolling through what I assumed were more schemes to spend money he hadn't earned. "You could have asked," I said quietly. Travis didn't look up. "It's fine, Dad. You're not using it." Not using it. As if money I'd saved through decades of 12-hour days and skipped vacations was just sitting there waiting for his wife to blow it on whatever caught her eye at the mall. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? I'm Leonard Rockwell. People call me Lenny. I'm 61 years old, and I spent 33 years as a senior road infrastructure engineer before moving into private consulting. I know municipal codes better than most city planners. I know construction law, permit processes, financial structures, and how to build things that last. I also know how to stay quiet when staying quiet gives you an advantage. I didn't argue. I just watched my son, really looked at him, and saw someone I didn't recognize anymore. The mall trip took 2 hours. When Vanessa returned, she had that glow people get when they've spent money that cost them nothing emotionally. Shopping bags covered every surface in the kitchen. I saw labels I couldn't pronounce. I saw boxes for electronics I didn't recognize. I saw tissue paper and ribbons and the kind of excess that makes you wonder if people have lost their minds. "How much?" I asked. Travis waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about it. You've got plenty." I learned later, via a bank alert that struck me like a blow to the gut, that the total was $82,000. $82,000. On perfumes pricier per ounce than rare medicine. On handbags that could have fed a family for half a year. On a leather jacket Vanessa called investment fashion over speakerphone, as if style could actually gain in value. The cashier had rung it all up, inserted my card, and stared at the terminal screen. According to Vanessa's later retelling, which she shared with disturbing pride, there'd been a long, awkward pause. The cashier had started to say something. "Sorry, but this card is..." But the transaction went through. My account was drained by a third. All because my son thought my life savings was his personal expense account. I didn't explode. I didn't lecture. I didn't do any of the things a father is supposed to do when his child betrays him. I just looked at Travis, really looked at him, and understood that somewhere along the way I'd raised a stranger. "You should have asked," I said again. Travis laughed. Actually laughed, like I'd told a joke. "Come on, Dad. You're sitting on a pile of cash doing nothing with it. We're building a life here. Vanessa deserves nice things. You want your daughter-in-law walking around in bargain brands? Vanessa deserves nice things." As if I'd spent 4 decades pouring concrete and reviewing blueprints in the rain and snow so my son's wife could smell expensive. I went home that night to my small house in suburban Portland, the house I'd paid off 15 years early by working weekends, and sat in the dark for 3 hours. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't pour a drink, didn't call anyone. I just sat there in my recliner, feeling the weight of what had happened, feeling something fundamental shift in my chest. My son had stolen from me, not borrowed, stolen. And he'd done it with a smile, with casual entitlement, with the kind of arrogance that comes from never being told no. The next morning, I got up at 5, like always, made coffee, and started making lists. I've always been a list maker. It's how engineers think. You identify the problem, break it down into components, and solve each piece systematically. Problem. My son views me as a resource to exploit. Solution. Remove myself as a resource. I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. Every loan I'd given him, every emergency I'd covered, every promise to pay me back that had evaporated like steam. The list went back 7 years. It totaled $97,000, not counting the recent $82,000. I'd funded my own exploitation to the tune of nearly $180,000. I saved the document in 3 places, including a cloud drive Travis didn't know existed. Then I started making phone calls. Travis called me 3 days later. His voice was bright and casual, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just orchestrated the theft of $82,000 from his own father. "Hey, Dad, Listen, Vanessa and I were thinking. You've got that old truck just sitting in your driveway collecting rust. We could really use it for moving some furniture this weekend. I'll swing by tomorrow morning and grab the keys. Not a question, not a request. A statement of intent. He'd already decided, already made plans, already assumed I'd comply. The truck's not available, I said. Pause. I could hear him processing, trying to figure out if he'd heard me correctly. What do you mean, not available? You don't even drive it anymore. It's just sitting there. I mean, it's mine, and I'm not lending it out. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear Vanessa's voice in the background, shrill and insistent, asking what was wrong. Dad, don't be difficult. It's just a truck. We're family. Then buy one. His tone shifted. Not angry yet, but heading there, frustration bleeding through the casual facade. You know what? Fine. Forget it. I thought you'd want to help your family, but I guess we're on our own. I guess 40 years of me being your son doesn't mean anything. The manipulation was almost beautiful in its transparency. Twist the narrative, make himself the victim, make me the unreasonable one. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding the phone, feeling something cold and clear settle into my bones. This wasn't new behavior. I'd just been too blind to see the pattern, too willing to excuse it as youthful ambition or temporary financial struggles. I opened my laptop and started going through old emails, old texts, old voicemails I'd saved without quite knowing why. The evidence was everywhere once I started looking. A year ago? Dad, I need to borrow $15,000 for a business opportunity. It's a sure thing. I'll pay you back with interest in 3 months. I'd given it to him. Never saw a cent back. Never even got an explanation. 8 months ago. Emergency, Dad. We need $8,000 to cover a lease deposit or we'll lose the townhouse. I'll pay you back within 60 days, I promise. I'd covered it. The promise evaporated like morning fog. 6 months ago. Dad, can you co-sign on this car lease? It won't cost you anything. It's just a formality. I'd refused that one. Travis hadn't spoken to me for 3 weeks afterward. The $82,000 shopping spree wasn't an anomaly. It was an escalation. It was my son testing how far he could push, how much he could take, how completely he could exploit the relationship. I made another list. This one had dates, amounts, broken promises, and my own notes about his reactions when I'd asked about repayment. I saved it with the other documents, evidence, insurance, protection. 2 weeks passed. Travis and Vanessa invited me over for Sunday dinner. I almost declined. Why would I want to sit across from people who viewed me as a walking wallet? But I wanted to see how they'd play it. Would they apologize? Acknowledge the card incident? Show even a flicker of awareness that what they'd done was wrong? They pretended it never happened. Vanessa showed off her new handbags like they were Olympic medals, describing each one's provenance and designer pedigree. Travis talked endlessly about his latest venture, some cryptocurrency consulting business that sounded like a pyramid scheme wearing a blockchain costume. He kept using words like disruption and market positioning and leveraging digital assets without saying anything concrete, without explaining how any of it made money. I ate my pot roast, which wasn't bad, I'll give Vanessa that, and watched them. Really watched them. The way Vanessa touched her jewelry constantly, making sure it caught the light. The way Travis checked his reflection in the window every few minutes. They looked like people who believed the world owed them a luxury lifestyle, and I was the bank that would never close, never audit their withdrawals, never demand repayment. After dinner, Travis walked me to my car. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. He put his hand on my shoulder, squeezed like we were buddies, like we understood each other. Hey, Dad, I know things have been tight for you lately. If you ever need financial advice, I'm here. I've learned a lot about wealth management over the past few years. I stared at him. Tight for me? Well, you know, fixed income, retirement savings. It's tough out there for guys your age. The economy's different now. Guys your age. Like I was some confused elderly man who didn't understand how money worked, who needed his 33-year-old son, who'd never held a real job for more than 18 months, to explain basic finance. I'm doing fine, I said. Travis smiled, that practice smile that probably worked on investors and landlords. Good, that's good. But if you ever want to talk about setting up a trust or anything, making sure your assets are protected as you get older, I know some people. Estate planning specialists. They could help you organize everything properly. There it was. Not even subtle anymore. He wanted access to my accounts, my properties, my everything, and he wanted it formalized, legally protected, impossible for me to reverse once I realized what was happening. I'll keep that in mind, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I drove home with my hands tight on the wheel, knuckles white, jaw clenched. When I got back to my house, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in my kitchen in the dark and made a new list. This one had names: lawyers I'd worked with on construction contracts, accountants who specialized in financial protection, bank managers I'd known for decades, old colleagues who'd dealt with fraud cases. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg him to be better, to remember who raised him, to show basic human decency. I was going to do what I did best: build something structural, something that would last, something that couldn't be undone with charm or excuses or manipulation. I was going to protect myself. And if that meant burning bridges, so be it. Some bridges deserve to burn. I found the document on a Tuesday afternoon, and it changed everything. Travis had stopped by unannounced, which he'd been doing more frequently, always with some thin excuse about checking in or just being in the neighborhood. He'd asked to use my bathroom, left his laptop open on my kitchen table, and I'd glanced at the screen. Just a glance. But that glance was enough. Power of attorney, financial management. Leonard Rockwell, grantor. Travis Rockwell, agent. I didn't touch the laptop. Didn't click anything. Didn't let my face show the ice water suddenly flooding my veins. I just read what was visible on the screen, absorbing every word, understanding exactly what I was looking at. It was a draft document, not signed, but the language was crystal clear. If I signed this, if Travis somehow convinced or coerced or tricked me into signing, he would have full legal control over my bank accounts, property sales, investment decisions, everything. The document cited advancing age and diminished capacity as justification. Advancing age, diminished capacity. I'm 61 years old. I run a consulting business that brought in $140,000 last year. I manage 3 rental properties with a combined value of $890,000. I file my own taxes. I review construction contracts that lawyers half my age struggle to understand. My mind is sharper now than it was at 40. But to my son, I was just an obstacle between him and my money. Travis came back from the bathroom, grabbed his laptop, snapped it shut without looking at the screen. He left 10 minutes later, after asking if I'd thought more about that estate planning conversation. I waited until his car disappeared down the street. Then I called Michael Brennan. Mike's a lawyer I'd worked with on construction contracts for 15 years. He specializes in business law and asset protection. More importantly, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. Mike, I need to set up ironclad protections on all my accounts and properties, and I need it done quietly, quickly, and in a way that can't be reversed or challenged. What's going on, Lenny? Family situation. I'll explain when we meet. We met the next morning at his office downtown. I showed him everything. Screenshots of my bank accounts showing the $82,000 withdrawal, the timeline of loans and broken promises, printouts of text messages, and a photo I'd taken of Travis's laptop screen showing the power of attorney document. Mike's expression went from curious to concerned to grim. He sat back in his chair, steepled his fingers, and looked at me with the kind of seriousness you don't want to see on your lawyer's face. Your son's trying to establish financial control, he said. This power of attorney document, if he gets you to sign it legally, he can drain everything. Your accounts, your properties, your investments, all of it. And once it's signed, it's very difficult to revoke, especially if he argues you're not mentally competent to make that decision. Can we block it? We can do better. We can make sure he can't touch anything, even if he somehow gets that document signed. But you'll need to move fast, and you'll need to be thorough. I moved fast. Within 1 week, I restructured my entire financial life. Mike worked 16-hour days to make it happen, and I paid him well for the urgency. My main savings, $127,000 after the $82,000 theft, went into an irrevocable trust with Mike as trustee. My 3 rental properties transferred into an LLC I controlled, with operating agreements that prevented any transfer of ownership without notarized consent from 2 independent attorneys. I set up fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus. I changed every password on every account. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything. I added verbal passwords to my bank accounts that only I knew. I locked down every financial access point like I was securing a military installation. Mike also helped me file a formal report with my bank about the unauthorized $82,000 withdrawal. It wasn't enough to press charges. Travis had technically been given the card, even if not the permission to spend that amount, but it created a paper trail. Evidence, documentation, insurance against future claims that I'd willingly given him access. Travis called me that Friday evening. His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the frustration underneath. Dad, I tried to check on your utility account today. Make sure you're staying current on payments. And the system says I don't have authorization anymore. I let the silence stretch. Let him sit in it. That's because you don't. What? Why would you lock me out? I'm just trying to help. What if you forget to pay something? What if your credit score gets damaged? I pay my bills on time. I've never missed a payment in 40 years. I don't need that kind of help. His tone shifted, frustration bleeding through the careful concern. Dad, come on. You're not getting any younger. What if something happens? What if you have a medical emergency? What if you can't manage things anymore? I'm trying to look out for you. I'm 61, not 91. I run a business. I manage properties. I'm not incompetent, Travis. I never said you were incompetent. I just think it makes sense to have someone else on your accounts, just as a backup. It's responsible planning. I know what you think, I said, cutting him off. You think I'm a resource to manage, a problem to solve, an asset to liquidate. I'm not. Silence. Then his voice changed completely, dropping the pretense of concern, revealing something colder underneath. Fine, if that's how you want to play it, Dad, but don't come crying to me when you need help. I won't. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling the weight of what had just happened. This was a line we couldn't uncross. There was no going back from this, no future Sunday dinners where we pretended everything was fine, no holidays where we played happy family. But I didn't feel regret. I felt clarity. 2 days later, Vanessa called. Sunday afternoon, her voice syrupy sweet, dripping with artificial concern. Lenny, hi. Travis told me you've been feeling stressed lately. I just want you to know we're here for you. We care about you. If you need anything at all, we're family, and family takes care of each other. I appreciate that, I said, keeping my tone neutral, giving her nothing. Actually, I was wondering about something. You know that lake house property you mentioned once? The one up near Sebago? I remember you saying you might sell it someday. There it was. I'd mentioned that property exactly once, 8 months ago, in passing during a casual conversation. She'd remembered because she'd seen dollar signs. That property was worth $320,000. I'm not selling it, I said. Oh, I just thought, if you were looking to liquidate some assets, downsize a bit, maybe simplify your life, we might be interested. We could keep it in the family. Keep it in the family. Translation. Let us buy it below market value with money we don't have, probably with a loan they'd expect me to co-sign. I'm not selling, I repeated. Pause. Her voice cooled 30 degrees. Okay. Well, if you change your mind, let us know. It would be a shame to lose that property to strangers. She hung up. I immediately made a note in my documentation file. Vanessa inquiring about lake house property. Coordinated with Travis's power of attorney attempt. Appears to be testing which assets they can access. I was building a case without quite knowing what the case was for yet, but I knew I'd need it. 3 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Rockwell, this is Jeffrey Hastings. I'm an attorney in Portland. Your son Travis has retained me to discuss some family estate planning matters. He's concerned about ensuring your financial security as you enter your retirement years. Would you be available to meet this week? I felt my jaw tighten. Travis had hired a lawyer. He was escalating. I have my own attorney, I said. Eek, if you need to discuss anything, contact Michael Brennan at Brennan & Associates. Of course, but Travis felt it might be helpful if we could have an informal conversation first, just to. Contact my attorney, I said, and hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. Pure, cold anger. My son had hired a lawyer to pressure me into giving him control of my life savings. I called Mike immediately. They're coming after you legally, Mike said after I explained. This Hastings guy, I know him. He does estate planning, but he also handles financial conservatorships, cases where people are deemed unable to manage their own affairs. I'm completely capable of managing my affairs. I know that. But if Travis can make a case that you're declining mentally or physically, if he can get testimony from people who'll say you're forgetful or confused, he might be able to petition for conservatorship. It's a long shot, but it's possible. What do? We document everything. Your cognitive function, your financial management, your daily activities. I'll arrange for you to get a full medical and psychiatric evaluation from a doctor of our choosing. We'll create a record showing you're completely competent. And we'll make it clear to this Hastings character that any attempt to pursue conservatorship will be met with a countersuit for elder abuse and financial exploitation. I did the evaluation, passed everything. Cognitive function normal for my age, no signs of dementia, confusion, or impairment. The doctor wrote a detailed report, which Mike filed with the court as a preemptive measure, but the damage was done. My son hadn't just stolen money. He was trying to steal my autonomy, my independence, my right to control my own life. That's when I stopped thinking about protection and started thinking about consequences. 3 weeks after the lawyer incident, I decided to set a trap. Travis had been calling more frequently, leaving voicemails that walked a careful line between concerned and accusatory. "Dad, just checking in. Haven't heard from you. Want to make sure you're okay. Give me a call back." I didn't call back. I was busy documenting, recording, and preparing. Mike had set me up with a voice-activated recording system that was legal in Maine, a one-party consent state, meaning I could record conversations I was part of without telling the other person. Every call with Travis or Vanessa got recorded automatically and backed up to a secure cloud server. I needed them to show their true intentions. I needed them to say, out loud and on record, what they really wanted. So I called Travis and pretended to be confused. "Hey, son, I'm having some trouble with my online banking. The website changed and I can't figure out how to check my balance anymore. You're good with computers. Can you help?" I could hear the excitement in his voice, barely contained. "Of course, Dad. I'll come over right now." He arrived 20 minutes later with Vanessa. I hadn't invited her, but there she was, wearing another expensive outfit I'd probably funded. I sat them down at my kitchen table with my laptop open to the bank's login page. I made a show of squinting at the screen, clicking random things, acting frustrated. "It used to be simple," I said. "Now there's all these security questions and two-factor authentication, and I don't understand what any of it means." Travis leaned in, his hand moving toward the keyboard. "Here, let me log in for you. What's your password?" "I don't remember. I think I wrote it down somewhere." This was the bait. I watched Travis exchange a glance with Vanessa, watched them see opportunity. "Dad, this is exactly what I've been worried about," Travis said, his voice dropping into that careful tone of concern. "You can't remember passwords. You're having trouble with basic computer tasks. What if something important happens and you can't access your accounts?" "I guess I'm just getting old," I said, playing the part. Vanessa jumped in. "Lenny, there's no shame in needing help. Everyone needs help eventually. Travis and I have been talking, and we think it might be time to set up some kind of system where we can help you manage things, just as a backup." "What kind of system?" Travis pulled out a folder from his bag. Inside was the power of attorney document I'd seen on his laptop, now printed and formatted officially with signature lines highlighted in yellow. "This is just a standard financial power of attorney," he said, sliding it across the table. "It means if you can't manage things, if you forget passwords or get confused, I can step in and handle it for you. It doesn't take away your control. It just gives you backup." That was a flat lie. The document gave him complete control, immediately and irrevocably. I picked up the document, pretended to read it, let my eyes lose focus like I was struggling to understand the legal language. "I don't know," I said. "This seems like a big step." "Dade, look at yourself," Travis said, his voice sharpening. "You can't even log into your bank account. You're living alone in this house. What if you fall? What if you have a stroke? What if your mind starts to go? We need to plan for this stuff." Vanessa put her hand on mine. Her fingers were cold. "We love you, Lenny. We just want what's best for you. And honestly, wouldn't it be easier to let us handle the complicated stuff? You could just relax, enjoy your retirement, not worry about bills and accounts and all that stress." I looked at them both, saw the hunger in their eyes, saw them circling what they thought was a wounded animal. "Can I think about it?" I asked. Travis's expression tightened. "Dad, I don't think you understand how urgent this is. Your cognitive decline is accelerating. I've noticed it for months. The forgetfulness, the confusion, the difficulty with simple tasks. We need to act now, while you're still competent enough to sign." Cognitive decline, accelerating. He was building a narrative, creating a story he could tell doctors and lawyers and judges. "I'll think about it," I repeated more firmly. Travis stood up, frustrated. "Fine, but don't wait too long. I'm trying to help you here, and you're being stubborn." They left. I sat at my table with their document in front of me, the recording system having captured everything, and I smiled for the first time in weeks. I called Mike and played him the recording. "That's coercion," Mike said immediately. "That's elder manipulation. That's attempted financial exploitation. Lenny, this is enough to file a restraining order if you want." "Not yet. I want more. I want them to bury themselves so deep they can never climb out." Over the next 2 weeks, I played the confused old man perfectly. I called Travis with questions about bills I'd already paid. I asked Vanessa to explain things I understood better than she ever would. I let them think they were winning, let them believe I was declining, let them get comfortable with the idea that their plan was working. And every conversation was recorded. Travis started talking more freely, his guard dropping. During one call, he told Vanessa, on speakerphone not realizing I could hear, "Just be patient. He's almost there. Another month and we'll have complete control. Then we can liquidate the rental properties, move the cash offshore, and he'll never even know what happened." Vanessa laughed. "Does he really think we're going to take care of him? Once we have the money, he's going into the cheapest nursing home we can find." That recording went into my evidence file with a timestamp and full transcript. They showed me who they were. I just had to listen. But I needed one more piece. I needed them to say it clearly, unambiguously, on record. I needed a confession so complete that even they couldn't deny it. So I invited them to Sunday dinner at my house. I cooked pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans, Travis's favorite meal from childhood, back when he was still a kid, I recognized, before money and entitlement poisoned everything good in him. They arrived dressed like they were going to a country club. Vanessa wore a dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Travis had a new watch, something Swiss and expensive, gleaming on his wrist like a beacon of debt. We ate, made small talk. I asked about their lives, their plans, their business ventures that never quite seemed to materialize into actual income. They asked about my health, my memory, my ability to manage things at my age. After dinner, I poured coffee and brought out the documents. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told Travis. "About the power of attorney, about getting help with my finances. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am getting too old to handle everything myself." Travis's eyes lit up. He tried to hide it, tried to keep his expression neutral and concerned, but I saw the flash of victory cross his face. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Dad. It's really for the best." I slid the document across the table. "I want to read through it one more time before I sign. Can you explain exactly what this means? What you'll be able to do?" Travis launched into an explanation, lying smoothly about how it was just for emergencies and wouldn't change anything day to day. Vanessa nodded along, adding comments about how they'd take such good care of everything. I let them talk, let them explain how they'd move my money into better investments, how they'd simplify my property holdings, how they'd make sure I was comfortable and secure. Then I asked the question I'd been building toward. "And what happens to my rental properties? Do I keep those?" Travis hesitated, just for a second. "Well, Dad, those properties are a lot of work. Managing tenants, repairs, maintenance. At your age, that's too much stress. We'd probably sell them and move the cash into something simpler, conservative bonds, maybe a managed fund." "All 3 properties? It just makes sense. You'd have the cash, no more headaches. And how much are those properties worth?" "I don't know, maybe $800,000 total. We'd have to get them appraised." He knew exactly what they were worth. He'd probably already contacted real estate agents. "And that money would stay in my accounts? Under my control?" Another hesitation. "Technically, with the power of attorney, I'd manage the accounts. But it's your money, Dad. I'd just be handling the details." Vanessa couldn't help herself. She leaned forward, her voice honey-sweet. "Lenny, you have to understand. At your age, with your memory issues, managing that much money is dangerous. You could get scammed, lose everything. We're protecting you." "From what?" She blinked. "From scammers. From people who take advantage of elderly people." I sat back in my chair, coffee in hand, and looked at them both. Really looked at them. Saw them clearly, maybe for the first time. "What if I said no?" I asked quietly. Travis's expression hardened. "Dad, we've been over this. You're not capable of making these decisions anymore. If you won't sign willingly, I'll have to pursue conservatorship through the courts. I have documentation of your decline. I have witnesses. I have a lawyer ready to file." "Witnesses to what?" "Your forgetfulness, your confusion, your inability to manage basic tasks. I've been documenting it for months." I nodded slowly. "So, if I don't give you control, you'll go to court and try to take it." "I'm trying to avoid that," Travis said, his voice rising. "But yes, if necessary, that's what I'll do, because someone has to protect you from yourself." Vanessa added, "And honestly, Lenny, you should be grateful. We could just walk away, let you struggle alone. But we're not. We're family. We're stepping up." There it was, the truth finally spoken out loud. They weren't helping me. They were taking from me. And if I resisted, they'd use the courts to force it. I stood up slowly, walked to my desk, and picked up a file folder. "Before I sign anything," I said, "I want to make sure I understand our relationship, so I made a list." I opened the folder and pulled out the timeline I'd created. Every loan, every broken promise, every theft documented with dates and amounts. 7 years ago, you asked for $15,000 for a business opportunity. Never paid it back. 5 years ago, $8,000 for a lease deposit. Never paid it back. 3 years ago, $12,000 for a car down payment. Never paid it back. 8 months ago, another $8,000. Never paid it back. 3 weeks ago, $82,000 charged to my card without permission. I laid each page on the table, watching their faces change. That's $179,000 you've taken from me, not borrowed, taken, with no intention of ever repaying. Travis's face flushed. Those were loans, Dad. Family helps family. Loans require repayment. This is theft. You're twisting everything, Vanessa snapped. You gave that money freely. You wanted to help. Now you're trying to make us look bad. I pulled out another document. Bank statements showing the $82,000 withdrawal, highlighted and annotated. I didn't give permission for this. You took my card and spent $82,000 in 2 hours. On perfume, on handbags, on clothes. You had plenty, Travis said, standing up now, his voice getting louder. You were just hoarding it, doing nothing with it. We needed it. We have expenses, a lifestyle to maintain. A lifestyle you can't afford, I interrupted. A lifestyle funded by stealing from your father. Vanessa stood up too, her face twisted with anger. This is ridiculous. You're being selfish. You're old, alone, and you're going to lose everything anyway when you end up in a nursing home. At least this way, the money stays in the family. So that's the plan? Take everything now, before I actually need it? Travis moved around the table toward me, his hand reaching for the documents. Give me those. This is private family business. Don't touch them, I said, my voice hard. He grabbed for the folder anyway. I pulled it back. He grabbed my wrist, squeezing, trying to wrestle the papers away from me. Let go, I said. Give me the documents. He shoved me. Not hard, but enough that I stumbled back against the counter. Vanessa yelled something. Travis lunged for the folder again. I'm 61, but I spent 30 years on construction sites. I'm not fragile. I'm not weak. I pushed back, hard. Travis stumbled, caught himself on the table, his face red with fury. You're insane, he shouted. You're a crazy old man, and I'm going to have you declared incompetent. I'll take everything, the house, the properties, the accounts. All of it. You'll end up in a state facility eating pudding from a cup, and I'll be living in your lake house. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Let's go. He's not worth it. They headed for the door. Travis turned back, pointing at me. This isn't over, Dad. I'm filing for conservatorship tomorrow. By next month, you won't have control of anything. The door slammed. Their car roared out of my driveway. I stood in my kitchen, breathing hard, and checked the recording device hidden in the smoke detector. Every word captured, every threat documented, every intention exposed. I called Mike. I've got them, I said. I've got everything. Mike listened to the recordings twice without interrupting. When they finished, he sat back in his office chair and rubbed his eyes. This is attempted elder abuse, financial exploitation, coercion under duress, and with Travis physically grabbing you, that's assault. Lenny, this is prosecutable. I don't want prosecution, I said. I want protection, and I want them to understand what happens when you betray family. Mike nodded slowly. Then we go nuclear with civil action. Restraining orders, cease and desist, public filing of the evidence. We make it legally impossible for them to come near you or your assets. Not yet, I said. I need you to do something else first. I'd been thinking about this for days, planning it with the same methodical precision I used to design highway interchanges. You don't just solve a problem. You solve it in a way that prevents it from recurring. I want to sell everything, I told Mike. The rental properties, the lake house, everything except my primary residence. I want it converted to liquid assets and moved into trusts they can't touch, can't contest, can't reach even with a court order. That's extreme. They've already shown they'll try legal action. If I still own properties when they file for conservatorship, even if they lose, the court case could freeze my assets for months. I won't let them trap me like that. Mike leaned forward. If you liquidate, they'll know something's wrong. They'll accelerate their timeline. Good. Let them rush. Desperate people make mistakes. We spent the next week moving fast. Mike contacted real estate agents, appraisers, and investors he trusted. The rental properties went on the market at competitive prices. I didn't need top dollar, I needed speed. The lake house got listed privately to avoid public record searches Travis might monitor. Within 10 days, I had offers on all 4 properties. Within 3 weeks, closings were scheduled. Travis called me during this time, repeatedly, leaving voicemails that oscillated between concerned and threatening. I didn't answer. I didn't engage. I was busy dismantling every asset he'd been counting on stealing. The properties sold. $1.2 million total after closing costs and agent fees. Mike moved the money immediately into irrevocable trusts with 3 separate trustees, none of whom were family. The trust documents specified that no beneficiary could access principal for 10 years, only interest income. Even if Travis somehow got a conservatorship, he couldn't touch the trusts. They were untouchable. My monthly income from the trust interest was more than enough to live on. I was secure, and Travis was locked out forever. Then Travis made his move. Jeffrey Hastings, his lawyer, filed a petition for emergency conservatorship with the county court. The filing claimed I was experiencing rapid cognitive decline, had lost the ability to manage complex financial affairs, and was at immediate risk of being exploited by scammers and con artists. The irony was almost funny. The court scheduled a hearing for 3 weeks out. In conservatorship cases, the burden of proof is on the petitioner. Travis had to prove I was incompetent. But the process itself was invasive, humiliating, and public record. Mike filed our counter motion immediately. We attached the psychiatric evaluation showing my perfect cognitive function, affidavits from my business clients attesting to my professional competence, and a motion to dismiss with prejudice. We didn't attach the recordings. Not yet. That was the nuclear option, and I wanted to save it for maximum impact. The 3 weeks before the hearing were the longest of my life. Not because I was worried about the outcome. I had evidence of my competence and evidence of Travis's exploitation, but because I had to sit with the reality that my son was trying to legally declare me mentally unfit so he could steal everything I'd worked for. Some betrayals you see coming. This one blindsided me, even after everything else. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in mid-October. Cold rain hammered Portland, the kind of autumn storm that makes you want to stay inside with coffee and a book. Instead, I was putting on my best suit and preparing to defend my sanity in open court. Mike met me outside the courthouse. "Are you ready?" "No," I said honestly, "but let's do it anyway." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Travis and Vanessa sat on one side with Jeffrey Hastings. Mike and I sat on the other. A handful of people filled the gallery, court watchers probably, or law students looking for experience. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Patricia Morrison. She reviewed the filings with a neutral expression, asked preliminary questions, then turned to Hastings. "Counselor, present your case." Hastings stood, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, we're here because Leonard Rockwell, age 61, is experiencing significant cognitive decline that impairs his ability to manage his substantial financial affairs. My client, his son Travis Rockwell, has observed increasing forgetfulness, confusion with basic computer tasks, and inability to handle routine financial matters. We're seeking conservatorship to protect Mr. Rockwell from potential exploitation and to ensure his assets are properly managed." Judge Morrison looked at me. I sat perfectly still, meeting her eyes steadily. "Mr. Rockwell, how do you respond?" Mike stood. "Your Honor, this petition is frivolous and motivated by financial greed. Leonard Rockwell is fully competent, as documented by a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation conducted 3 weeks ago. He runs a successful consulting business, manages properties, and handles complex contracts. The petitioner is attempting to gain control of his father's assets through legal coercion." Hastings objected. "Your Honor, that's a serious accusation without evidence." Mike smiled coldly. "We have extensive evidence, which we'll present if necessary." Judge Morrison held up her hand. "Let's start with testimony. Mr. Hastings, call your first witness." Travis took the stand. Watching him swear to tell the truth felt surreal. Hastings walked him through a carefully constructed narrative. How I'd forgotten passwords. How I'd asked for help with simple computer tasks. How I'd seemed confused during conversations. How I'd mentioned forgetting where I'd put important documents. All true, technically. All part of the act I'd performed to trap him. "And you believe your father is no longer capable of managing his finances?" Hastings asked. "I believe he needs help," Travis said, his voice solemn. "I love my father. I just want to protect him." Mike stood for cross-examination. He was calm, methodical, and terrifying. "Mr. Rockwell, how much money has your father given you over the past 7 years?" Travis blinked. "I don't know the exact amount." "Approximately?" "Maybe 50,000 for various family needs and business opportunities." Mike pulled out a document. "According to bank records and your father's documentation, the amount is $179,000. Does that sound correct?" Travis's face reddened. If that's what the records show. And how much of that have you repaid? Silence. Mr. Rockwell. Those were gifts, not loans. Did your father ever specifically state they were gifts? It was understood. Mike pulled out another document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence text messages from Travis Rockwell to his father, promising to repay these amounts, dated and time-stamped. Hastings objected. Relevance, Your Honor? It's relevant to motive, Mike said. The petitioner claims to be concerned about his father's welfare while simultaneously owing him a substantial debt. It suggests financial interest rather than genuine concern. Judge Morrison overruled the objection. The text messages went into evidence. Mike continued. Mr. Rockwell, 3 weeks ago, did you or your wife use your father's bank card to make purchases? My father gave us his card. Did he authorize purchases totaling $82,000? Travis hesitated. He said we could use it. Did he specify an amount? Not specifically, but yes or no, Mr. Rockwell. Did your father authorize $82,000 in charges? No, but he had the money. Thank you. No further questions. Travis left the stand looking shaken. Hastings called Vanessa next. She testified about my supposed confusion, my forgetfulness, my difficulty with modern technology. Mike's cross-examination was brief and brutal. Mrs. Rockwell, do you work? I'm a homemaker. And your household income comes primarily from your husband? Yes. Who provides your husband with money? Vanessa's expression tightened. He has various business ventures that don't appear to generate income, according to his tax returns, so where does your money come from? I don't see how that's relevant. Your Honor, I'm establishing financial dependence on the respondent, which creates motive to gain control of his assets. Judge Morrison nodded. Answer the question, Mrs. Rockwell. Sometimes Leonard helps us, Vanessa admitted. Sometimes or constantly. She didn't answer. No further questions. Hastings tried to rehabilitate his case with character witnesses. Neighbors Travis had apparently prepared. People who testify I seemed forgetful or confused. But Mike destroyed each one on cross-examination, revealing they barely knew me and were testifying based on brief interactions or things Travis had told them. Then it was our turn. Mike called me to the stand. I swore to tell the truth and sat down, facing the courtroom. Travis watched me with an expression somewhere between anger and desperation. Vanessa looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. Mike started with simple questions. My work history, my education, my current consulting projects. I answered clearly, specifically, with details that demonstrated perfect recall and cognitive function. Mr. Rockwell, your son testified that you've been experiencing memory problems. Is that true? No, I said. I intentionally acted confused to see how he'd respond. I suspected he was trying to gain access to my finances, and I wanted to confirm his intentions before taking action. Hastings objected. Your Honor, this is speculation about my client's motives. It's testimony about the respondent's own actions and reasoning, Mike countered. He's allowed to explain his behavior. Judge Morrison overruled the objection. Mike continued. Can you describe what happened when you acted confused? My son immediately tried to get me to sign a power of attorney document. He told me I was experiencing cognitive decline and needed his help. He became aggressive when I hesitated. He told me he'd pursue conservatorship through the courts if I didn't sign willingly. Did he ever express concern for your welfare separate from gaining control of your finances? No. Every conversation focused on access to my accounts and properties. Mike pulled out the audio recordings. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence recorded conversations between Leonard Rockwell and his son Travis Rockwell, demonstrating coercion, exploitation, and intent to improperly gain control of assets. Hastings jumped up. Objection. These recordings were made without my client's knowledge or consent. Maine is a one-party consent state, Mike said calmly. Leonard Rockwell was party to all these conversations. The recordings are legal and admissible. Judge Morrison reviewed the legal citations Mike provided. Objection overruled. I'll allow the recordings. We played 3 excerpts. The first was Travis explaining how they'd liquidate the rental properties and move the cash offshore once they had control, with Vanessa laughing about putting me in the cheapest nursing home. The second was Travis threatening to pursue conservatorship if I didn't sign his documents. The third was the confrontation in my kitchen where Travis physically grabbed me and threatened to take everything. The courtroom was silent when they finished playing. Judge Morrison looked at Travis. Her expression had changed from neutral to cold. Mr. Hastings, do you have any response to these recordings? Hastings was pale. Your Honor, these statements were made in the heat of the moment, taken out of context. They sound very clear and in context to me, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Brennan, anything else? Just one more piece of evidence, Your Honor. The psychiatric evaluation demonstrating that Leonard Rockwell has no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Mike submitted the evaluation. Judge Morrison reviewed it silently for several minutes. Finally, she looked up. I'm denying this petition. Leonard Rockwell has demonstrated full cognitive capacity and financial competence. Furthermore, the evidence suggests this petition was filed in bad faith with the intent to gain improper access to the respondent's assets. Mr. Hastings, I'm sanctioning you for bringing a frivolous case. You should have vetted your client's claims more thoroughly. Hastings tried to object. Judge Morrison cut him off. I'm also issuing a restraining order. Travis Rockwell and Vanessa Rockwell are prohibited from contacting Leonard Rockwell or attempting to access his financial accounts or property. Any violation will result in contempt charges. This order is permanent and non-negotiable. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Travis stood up, his face twisted with rage. This is insane. He's my father. You can't stop me from talking to my own father. I just did, Judge Morrison said. Leave this courtroom before I hold you in contempt right now. Security moved toward Travis. Hastings grabbed his arm, practically dragging him toward the exit. Vanessa followed, her heels clicking rapidly on the floor. I sat there in the witness box, breathing slowly, feeling something enormous settle into place. It was over. The legal threat was finished. They couldn't touch me now. Mike helped me down from the stand. That went better than expected. What happens now? Now? Now you live your life. They're barred from contact. If they violate the restraining order, they'll face criminal charges. You're free. We walked out of the courthouse into cold October rain. I stood on the steps, letting water soak into my jacket, and felt something like peace. But it wasn't quite finished. The legal battle was done, but Travis and Vanessa still had their lifestyle, their sense of entitlement, their belief that they'd eventually find a way around the restrictions. I needed them to understand, completely and permanently, that there were consequences for what they'd done. I needed one final move. 2 days after the hearing, I made a series of phone calls. The first was to the landlord who owned Travis and Vanessa's townhouse. His name was Richard Delacourt, and I'd known him for 20 years through construction industry connections. We'd worked together on a commercial project back in 2008. Richard, it's Lenny Rockwell. I need to ask you something about a tenant you have, Travis Rockwell and his wife. Oh, yeah. They're 3 months behind on rent. I've been patient because Travis keeps saying his father will cover it, but I'm about to start eviction proceedings. 3 months. They'd been living rent-free while trying to steal my savings. Don't wait, I said. Start the eviction now. And Richard? Travis has been telling people I'm covering his rent. I'm not. I've never agreed to that. If he claims otherwise, he's committing fraud. Jesus. Thanks for the heads up, Lenny. The eviction notice went out the next day. 3 months of unpaid rent, plus fees, totaled $8,400. Travis and Vanessa had 30 days to pay or vacate. The second call was to BMW Financial Services. Travis's leased car, the one he loved showing off, the one with the luxury package and premium sound system, was also 3 months behind on payments. I knew because Travis had asked me to temporarily cover the payments 6 months ago, and I'd refused. I explained to the finance company that Travis had been representing himself as financially supported by me, which was false. They flagged his account and initiated repossession proceedings. The third call was more complicated. Travis had registered a business, Rockwell Financial Consulting, LLC, using my last name and, I suspected, my professional reputation to attract clients. I contacted the Maine Secretary of State office and filed a complaint about fraudulent business registration, attaching evidence that Travis had implied family financial backing that didn't exist. The business license got suspended pending investigation. The fourth call was to 3 different banks where Travis had applied for credit cards and small business loans, using me as a reference without permission. I contacted each one, explained he'd used my name fraudulently, and requested they review his applications for misrepresentation. 2 of the banks immediately froze his accounts and initiated fraud reviews. I wasn't doing anything illegal. I was simply correcting false information and protecting my reputation. But the cumulative effect was devastating. Within 1 week, Travis and Vanessa's entire financial structure collapsed. The eviction notice arrived. The BMW got repossessed from their driveway at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. I heard about it from a neighbor who called to ask if I was okay, having heard about the family troubles. The business license suspension meant Travis couldn't operate under that name anymore. The frozen credit accounts meant they couldn't borrow their way out. Everything they'd built on lies and borrowed money crumbled. Travis tried to call me 14 times that week. The restraining order meant he couldn't legally contact me, but desperation makes people stupid. Each call went to voicemail. Each voicemail was a violation I documented and sent to Mike. The messages started angry. "How could you do this? I'm your son. You're destroying my life." Then desperate. "Dad, please. We'll lose everything. Just help us this one time. I'll pay you back, I swear." Then threatening. "You're going to regret this. I'll find a way to make you pay." Each message was evidence of restraining order violations. Mike sent copies to the court and the police. Then Vanessa started messaging me on social media. Another violation. Her messages were pleading, manipulative, designed to trigger guilt. "Lenny, please think about what you're doing. We're family. Travis made mistakes, but he's trying to change. Don't destroy your relationship with your son over money. Money isn't worth losing family." I didn't respond. Instead, I sent the messages to Mike, who sent them to the police. The police showed up at Travis and Vanessa's townhouse, soon to be their former townhouse, and issued a formal warning about the restraining order violations. One more contact attempt, and they'd face criminal charges. The messages stopped, but I wasn't done. I'd discovered something interesting while reviewing financial records. Travis had used my name as a guarantor on several documents without my knowledge or signature. The townhouse lease was one, a business equipment loan was another, a line of credit at a local furniture store was a third. These were forgeries. Serious ones. Using someone else's signature on financial documents is fraud, identity theft, and potentially a felony depending on the amounts involved. I gathered all the documents, had a handwriting expert compare the signatures to my actual signature, and took everything to the police. "I want to file charges for identity theft and fraud," I told the detective assigned to my case. His name was William Parker, a veteran cop with gray hair and tired eyes who'd seen everything. He reviewed the documents carefully. "These signatures aren't even close to yours. Did your son really think he'd get away with this?" "He thought I'd never check. He thought I'd just keep giving him money forever." Detective Parker nodded slowly. "We'll investigate. If the evidence holds up, and it looks pretty solid, he's looking at felony charges." "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" "He's your son." "He stopped being my son when he tried to steal everything I worked for," I said. "File the charges." The investigation took 3 weeks. During that time, Travis and Vanessa packed their townhouse, moved into a cheap apartment in a worse neighborhood, and presumably tried to figure out how to survive without access to my money. I felt nothing watching their lifestyle collapse. No guilt, no regret, no sadness. Just cold satisfaction. Detective Parker called me on a Friday afternoon. "We've completed the investigation. The signatures are definitely forged. We have testimony from the landlord and the loan company that they believed you were the guarantor based on documents your son provided. We're issuing a warrant for his arrest." "When?" "Monday morning." I thanked him and hung up. Sat in my kitchen with coffee going cold in my cup. Thought about the boy I'd raised, the man he'd become, and the stranger who'd tried to destroy me. Monday morning came. I didn't go to the courthouse, didn't watch the arrest, but Mike called me at noon with the details. Travis turned himself in with his lawyer. "They're trying to negotiate, but the DA isn't interested. The evidence is too strong, and your son's got a record of financial misrepresentation now. He's looking at 3 to 5 years if convicted." "What about Vanessa?" "She wasn't directly involved in the forgeries, so no charges, but she's retained her own lawyer and is apparently filing for divorce. Even she was abandoning him now." "What happens next?" I asked. "Trial, probably, unless he takes a plea deal. Lenny, are you sure about this? Once he's convicted, he's a felon. It'll follow him forever." "He did this to himself," I said. "I'm not the one who forged signatures. I'm not the one who committed fraud. I'm just the one who stopped letting him get away with it." Mike was quiet for a moment. "Fair enough. I'll keep you updated." The trial was scheduled for 6 weeks out, but 3 weeks before the trial date, Travis's lawyer contacted Mike about a plea deal. "My client will plead guilty to 1 count of identity theft in exchange for suspended sentence and probation," the lawyer offered. "No," I said when Mike told me. "He goes to trial. He faces full consequences." "Lenny, if you push this to trial and he's convicted of all charges, he's going to prison. Real prison, not probation." "Good." Mike studied me. "This is your decision, but I need to know you've thought it through." "I've thought about nothing else for months. He tried to declare me incompetent. He tried to steal everything. He forged my signature on legal documents. He destroyed any relationship we had left. I don't owe him mercy." "All right," Mike said. "We'll refuse the plea deal." The prosecution refused the plea. Travis's lawyer tried twice more to negotiate. Both times, I said no through Mike. We were going to trial. The trial began on a gray November morning, the kind of day where the sun never quite seems to rise, just transitioning from dark to less dark. I sat in the gallery with Mike, watching Travis sit at the defense table in a cheap suit, looking smaller than I remembered. Vanessa wasn't there. She'd filed for divorce 2 weeks earlier, citing irreconcilable differences and financial fraud. She was saving herself, distancing herself from the wreckage of his life. The prosecution's case was straightforward and devastating. They presented the forged documents. They brought in handwriting experts who testified the signatures were obvious forgeries. They called the landlord, who testified that Travis had assured him I was guaranteeing the lease. They called the loan officer, who said the same. Travis's lawyer tried to argue that these were misunderstandings, that Travis had believed he had my permission, that the forgeries were mistakes rather than intentional fraud. The prosecutor destroyed that defense in cross-examination. Mr. Rockwell, did you ever explicitly ask your father if you could sign his name to these documents? No, but I thought he'd be okay with it. You thought he'd be okay with you committing identity theft. I didn't think of it that way. But you knew you were signing his name without his permission? Yes. And you knew these documents legally bound him to financial obligations? Yes. So you intentionally signed your father's name to legal documents without his permission, creating financial obligations for him without his knowledge. Is that correct? Travis hesitated. When you put it that way, yes or no, Mr. Rockwell? Yes. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Travis collapsed into his chair when the verdict was read. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but Travis shook it off. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Mike told me the guidelines suggested 18 months to 3 years, depending on the judge's discretion. I attended the sentencing hearing. I wanted to be there. I needed to be there. The judge was the same Patricia Morrison who denied the conservatorship petition. She reviewed the case file with the same neutral expression, then looked at Travis. Mr. Rockwell, do you have anything to say before I impose sentence? Travis stood. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 months. Your Honor, I know I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I'm still his son. This is destroying our family. I'm asking for leniency, for a chance to make things right. Judge Morrison looked at me. Mr. Rockwell, would you like to address the court? Mike hadn't expected this. I hadn't prepared anything, but I stood up anyway. Your Honor, my son says he made mistakes, but these weren't mistakes. Mistakes are accidental. This was calculated, intentional, and sustained. He tried to steal my money. When that didn't work, he tried to have me declared incompetent. When that didn't work, he committed fraud using my identity. At every step, when given a chance to stop, to apologize, to show remorse, he chose to escalate. He's not sorry for what he did. He's sorry he got caught. He says this is destroying our family. He destroyed it, not me. I just refuse to be his victim anymore. I sat down. My hands were shaking. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. Travis Rockwell, I'm sentencing you to 3 years in state prison on the felony identity theft charge, with additional concurrent sentences on the fraud charges. You'll be eligible for parole after 18 months with good behavior. I'm also ordering restitution in the amount of $179,000, the documented amount you obtained from your father through false pretenses and fraud. Travis started crying. Real, ugly crying. His lawyer tried to comfort him, but Travis just kept repeating, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just emptiness. Court adjourned. Travis was taken into custody immediately. As they let him out in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. I looked away. Enfin, Mike and I walked out of the courthouse into cold November rain. Are you okay? Mike asked. I survived, I said. That's all that matters. He handed me an envelope. Final invoice. Also a recommendation for a therapist who specializes in family trauma. I took the envelope. Thanks, Mike, for everything. You did the hard part, Lenny. You protected yourself. He left. I stood there alone on the courthouse steps, watching the city continue like nothing had happened. I'd won. Legally, financially, completely. And I was okay with that. I moved to a smaller place on the coast in December, a cottage with a view of the ocean where I could hear waves instead of broken promises. In January, I got a letter from Travis, forwarded through Mike. He apologized extensively and asked if we could reconcile someday. I didn't answer it. Instead, I wrote one letter, the only communication I'd send him. Travis, I received your letter. I appreciate the apology, but I don't know if I can ever forgive what you did. Maybe someday, but not now. Focus on your rehabilitation. Focus on becoming someone you're not ashamed of. Don't focus on me. I'm not your solution anymore. Dad. I mailed it through Mike and moved on. The months passed. Winter turned to spring. I worked, I walked on the beach, I learned to live again. I'd spent months focused on revenge, on protection, on consequences. I'd won every battle, destroyed every scheme, ensured Travis faced full accountability. And now it was over. Some families break. Some betrayals can't be healed. Some relationships end not because you stop loving someone, but because loving them means destroying yourself. I'd chosen myself. Finally, after too long, I'd chosen myself. Travis was in prison. Vanessa had disappeared to Ohio. My money was protected. My life was mine again. I stood on my deck one April morning, coffee in hand, watching the ocean churn under gray skies. I thought about that day in Travis's townhouse. The day he handed my card to Vanessa like I was nothing. The day everything broke. Sweetheart, use Dad's card. He's got about $130,000 saved. That moment had destroyed him. Not me. Him. I just refused to go down with him. I took a sip of coffee. It was still hot, bitter, perfect. I was 61 years old. I'd survived betrayal. I'd survived my own son trying to steal everything I'd built, and I was still standing. That was enough.